My name is Spencer. I um I was the one who's been in contact with all of you about our program and invited you all to this meeting. So I want to thank everyone for being here. It's good to see everyone. Like I said, feel free to turn your cameras on as you feel comfortable. But we're here to talk today a little bit about the Rotary Youth Exchange program. And primarily for today, we're going to focus on the year-long program, but we'll also talk a little bit about our short-term summer-long programs as well. But just for the purposes of today, we'd have plenty of information to share with you about our year-long program. So, with that said, I will introduce myself. I am Spencer. I went to Poland in 2018, 2019 for the year-long Rotary program. And I currently serve as one of the Rotex presidents. And Rotex, if you're not familiar with that term, you might hear it a couple times today. Rotex is essentially just the term that we give to people who have completed the year-long exchange program. And we have a whole organization of alumni who have been through and who help out with the Rotary program. So you might get familiar with us as you continue. And I also am a country officer for Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. And I'll toss it over to Doris.
Hello, I'm Doris. I, along with Spencer, am a co-president for Rotex. This is my second year on our leadership team. I was the inbound officer last year, which means I worked with all of our students from other countries who are doing their exchanges here in Minnesota and Wisconsin. I went to Croatia in 2014, 2015, so a little bit ago, but I'm super excited to be here.
Eric?
All right, I am Eric Johnsrud. I am the chair of North Star Rotary Youth Exchange. I've been a Rotarian since 1985 and been involved in youth exchange basically ever since then. I was a Rotarian in Winona for 36 years before moving to Northfield 2 years ago, and I'm currently a member of the Northfield Rotary Club.
And Yvette.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yvette. I went to South Korea on the year-long exchange from 2017, 2018. And I have also been a part of the Rotex Leadership Board for a while now. Last year, I served as administrative officer. This year, I am outbound officer. Doris, was that correct? We talked about it this weekend. I kept calling myself orientation officer. Wrong name. It's outbound officer. But I am also this year's North Star Youth Exchange Orientation Chair, so I will be responsible for creating the schedules and also just establishing the activities that will take place at the 3 mandatory orientations that people who are applying for the year-long program are expected to participate in order to prepare you for your year abroad. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Cool. Well, we're gonna break down a couple things for you. I think that a lot of people, as they come into the youth exchange program, maybe are not familiar even with what Rotary is itself. I know for one that I was not necessarily familiar with what Rotary was as I was joining the Rotary Youth Exchange program, and they help sponsor our program. And Rotary is essentially a global humanitarian organization, and it's made up of over 1.4 million people across the globe. And amongst that, there are 46,000 clubs that those people belong to. And that just those clubs are often associated with where you're located. So your city typically has one or more Rotary clubs that it belongs to. And Rotary's efforts are largely focused on a variety of different things. So, primarily creating world peace. Our slogan for North Star Rotary or for the Rotary Youth Exchange program is that we are creating world peace one student at a time. And we hope that that will resonate with you because um, we hope that that's kind of the message that our students get as they go through our program. Rotary is also focused on fighting disease. You may be familiar with Rotary's efforts, but on eradicating polio, and it had a 99% efficacy rate. And there is other efforts on supporting education, protecting the environment, and providing clean water, sanitation, and hygiene. So if we break it down just a little bit further, so North Star Rotary is the youth exchange program that Rotary International, we are part of the Rotary International network. But if you essentially Rotary is comprised of districts that a collection of clubs belong to, like geographically. So North Star Rotary is made up of Rotary districts 5950 and 5960. So on the picture there, 5950 is the blue region, and then the green region is 5960. And we are actually one of the largest youth exchange districts in the world, not necessarily geographically, but by the number of students that we exchange every year, which is about 30 to 60 students. We exchange students between the ages of 15 and 19 for our year-long program. So by the time that you go abroad, you cannot turn the age of 19 before you leave for your exchange. But I know that me and Yvette both did programs during our gap year. So we went in between high school and university. So this is a little bit about how our program operates. So as I was just mentioning, you will exchange district to district. So a student, you will leave from the North Star Rotary District and you will go to a host country's district. Some countries, based on population or amount of resources, may have multiple districts in their country, or in my instance, I went to Poland, and Poland is one Rotary district. So within that district, you will then be hosted by a local Rotary club. So my local Rotary club was in a city named Gdynia, and it was on the Baltic Sea in the north of Poland. But you will exchange one Rotary club to another. And essentially, you're going to be fully integrated into that city, into the community, into the culture. You will attend high school like all of the other students in that country. You'll live with up to 3 host families, depending on availability. And that just allows you to kind of get like a breadth of cultural experience because we try to give you different environments to live in that allow you to experience different families and what that's like. And I actually want to toss it over to Yvette and Derice to talk a little bit about their exchange experience and how that transformed them.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I went to South Korea in 2017, 2018, and it was honestly the exchange of a lifetime. As corny as it sounds, as cliche as it sounds, it is really true. The reason I decided to go abroad on behalf of the North Star Youth Exchange was, like Spencer had mentioned earlier, was a gap year. When I was in high school, I made it to my senior year of high school and was really uncertain about what it was I wanted to do for a career. And I thought, well, what better way to find out than going abroad and seeing if there's something out there that maybe calls my attention. For a while, I thought maybe it was like business or marketing. For a while, I contemplated maybe communications or linguistics. So I thought, well, if I go abroad and go to South Korea, maybe I'll see if that's my calling. So sure enough, I go to South Korea and turns out that is not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It was not business, it was not marketing, it was not communications or linguistics. And I found that out through the amazing opportunity of living in Korea. I had 2 host families. My first host family I lived with for about, I believe, 5 or 6 months before I moved to my second host family, who I ended my exchange with. So I also lived with them for about 5 or 6 months before coming back to the United States. And it was amazing. I was in school Monday through Friday, and this was optional. My school allowed me to stay the entire day. Some schedules will differ depending on the country and also just the availability of attention that schools or school teachers can give to you. Usually, though, you will be put in a school where you can participate in all school activities with your homeroom, classroom, and your classmates. So I was in school from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I know that that sounds very scary and very crazy, but it was so much fun. I had a really great time with all of my classmates who were so kind to me and helped me so much in learning Korean and strengthening the skills that I had already learned before going abroad. And so to kind of tell you guys a little bit about these photos here, the photo on the far left was actually our art teacher. So in Korea, you don't move from classrooms to classrooms. In fact, the teachers will come to you. But for this class in particular, we would move into his classroom because he had more space. There was more availability for arts and crafts, and he was really nice. And this was his homeroom classroom. So before we left, me and another student named Vicky from Taiwan, and who was in the same city as me, we went over, took some pictures in his class, and we were just having so much fun. He cracked a joke. That's why we're all smiling in this photo. The second photo in the center is me playing a traditional Korean instrument named kayagum, which is essentially a harp. My host mom, who is sitting right behind me, helping another student playing the kayagum, she's actually a kayagum teacher. She teaches at a university and has played in different neighboring Asian countries, Japan, Singapore, Indonesia. She's been called to different countries to perform at orchestras. So she's amazing at what she does. And then the last picture is actually a going away party that my classmates threw for me on my last day in South Korea. It was very emotional, very sweet. You know, they are people who I'm still in contact with today, especially my host parents as well. I still talk to them. But ultimately, Korea did definitely help me figure out what it was that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. You know, we had the opportunity to travel to the demilitarized zone, and it was in that moment where global studies came to mind, the international relations or things of that nature is what I really wanted to do. So when I came back to the United States, I hit the floor running. I went right back to school. I have my bachelor's degree in global studies with a minor in Asian and Middle Eastern studies, and my focus is in human rights and social justice. Ultimately, the goal is to eventually work in diplomacy or be a foreign service officer or civil servant, something of that nature. Ultimately, it is my goal to work for the US government and hopefully extend North Star's program, which is promoting international peace and goodwill, one student at a time. And, you know, just creating global citizens, which I believe this program strongly helps us do by, again, giving people the opportunity to live in a country abroad for a year. You know, I think a lot of other programs that we hear about when it comes to exchange are usually anywhere between like, but I think the longest is like 6 months. But having the opportunity to live in a different country for an entire year, be fully immersed in the language and the culture, and live with non-English speaking host families was really, really a great opportunity. And it was so much fun. I love my host parents so much. I'm still in touch with them. Same with all my classmates, still in touch with them. And even the other students too, from Taiwan, from Denmark, from Iceland, and other kids who were there from the United States, like Florida and California. So it's an awesome opportunity. And I think if you're in a position like I was, where you're not really sure what it is you want to do after high school, I highly consider taking a gap year, such as I did. Um, Spencer mentioned too, like you can't be 19 before you leave the United States, which worked out perfectly for me because I tend to be older than my classmates. I arrived in South Korea the final week of August, and then 2 weeks later, I turned 19. So it worked out perfectly. But yes, that is what my exchange was like. It was, again, an amazing opportunity, a year of a lifetime. And if I could, I would talk about it all day, but I want to give Doris the opportunity to talk about her exchange as well.
Yes. All right. So, like I mentioned, I went to Croatia in 2014, 2015. So, I feel like I look like a baby in these photos, but just a little bit of context. So the one on the left was from our last orientation. So like we mentioned earlier, you do have three, and then a fourth orientation that's a little bit less formal, but three formal orientations as part of preparing to go on exchange. And so on my last one, of course, I had to take a photo with the Croatian flag. And you'll see I have my Rotary blazer on. It looks very empty in the photo, but one thing that's really cool about Rotary students is we all have our Rotary blazers, and then you exchange pins with other exchange students and you collect things. And so when you come back from exchange, your blazer is completely full of pins and anything else you decide to attach to your blazer. So mine is not just pins. There's like random stuff glued to it and taped to it and pinned to it. But yeah, still very important to me. And then the middle photo was in Dubrovnik. That was on one of our Rotary sponsored trips to the coast of Croatia. So I was in the capital city, which is a little bit inland. But you might know about Croatia that it's on the Adriatic Sea, which is an absolutely stunning coast. And Dubrovnik is the city that's furthest south on the coast. And it's an absolutely gorgeous city, very historical, a little bit touristy, but for good reason. There's a lot to see. They filmed Game of Thrones there and lots of other cool stuff. So that was one of the Rotary trips that we got to do. And then the one on the right was also from a Rotary trip. We did a few different trips throughout Europe, and many of them involved lots of train rides. So that was one of our many train rides that we took through Europe. But I really, really loved my exchange year. I had an amazing time in Croatia, and Croatia definitely was kind of a more obscure country for me to go to. I didn't speak any Croatian. Most people don't speak Croatian. It was a difficult language to learn at first, but luckily through Rotary, I had language classes that I went to with the other exchange students. So I was able to learn Croatian really well while I was there. And now it's like a fun little fact that I have that I just speak Croatian, and I'm one of very few people that I know that actually speak Croatian. But yeah, I absolutely loved my exchange year. I went to just like a normal public high school, but the way that high schools work in Croatia and many other countries, at least in Europe, I don't know about the rest of the world, is a lot of times they're divided by different subject areas or like different focuses. So in Croatia, they have like science high schools, medical high schools, language high schools, technology high schools. And so I went to a language school, and that meant that while most of my classes were in Croatian, they were also in another language as well. So I had a couple of classes in English, which was nice, made it a little bit easier, but definitely not the norm to have, more than one class maybe in English. But you learn Croatian pretty quickly once you're sitting in a class completely in Croatian and you don't know anything. But it was good that I learned Croatian because my first host family did speak English, but my second host family did not speak a single word of English. And so I was in two host families, the first one for 5 months, the second one for a little under 6 months. And yeah, it was good that I learned Croatian, because otherwise those 6 months with my second host family would have been a little bit difficult. But yeah, I had a great time. I won't talk too much because I feel like I could talk about this all day. But all in all, I feel like going on exchange and also my work with North Star and my work with Rotary since then has really kind of given me a drive for like what I want to do with my life over the next few years in my career. And really just being involved in this program has been really valuable for me.
All right, it's my turn. I get to talk about the nuts and bolts. So the cost of the program is $7,000. And if you compare that to other exchange programs, you'll find that that's about half the cost of those other exchange programs. The cost includes round trip airfare, accident, sickness, personal liability insurance, all the orientation sessions to prepare you for your exchange and the materials involved, and your Rotary blazer and pins. There's some costs that are not included that you will have to pay in addition to the program fee. Obviously, if you don't have a passport, you need to obtain that. And then there are visas usually that are required, or residency permits. If you have to go to a consulate to obtain your visa, that's something that you have to arrange for. Any inoculations you might need in order to go to your host country, and any gifts or personal items and local travel while on exchange. Now, there is some financial assistance available, and that's based on need. One thing I want to point out, though, for parents who might be listening in, is the support system that we have as being a Rotary program. Because when you're going on exchange, you're staying with families, but those families are supported by the local Rotary clubs and the local districts in that those clubs make up. So there are a lot of support people involved in the exchange program. On to the next slide. All right. So the application deadline is coming up fast. Like a month from today, November 15th. And the application is online on our website at northstarrotary.com. Once you have applied, then there'll be district interviews that are held on December 2nd, Saturday, December 2nd at Roseville Area Middle School in Roseville and in the cities. And following the interviews and selection, you will be notified of your acceptance by late December with your assignment of the country that you would be going to. So at this point, it's some important things you need to know. You should be talking to your school counselor as you make plans for applying and for going on exchange to approve your high school credits and make sure that you will have enough credits to graduate if you're going as a junior or senior in high school. Gap year students should communicate with their university about deferring any acceptance or deferring starting school, or in the alternative, you can just apply while you're on exchange abroad. ACT and SAT tests, you have to decide whether you would like to take the test before you go or after returning. And in some cases, you can take those tests in your host country. So there are some possibilities there for you to check out.
All right. So we talk a lot about the long-term program, but we also do have a short-term program as well. So if you're thinking about doing some sort of exchange program and you're maybe not sure if the long-term program would be right for you and you want to just kind of dip your toe in the water a little bit, or you just don't want to dedicate an entire year to being abroad, totally understandable. We do have a couple of short-term options. So we've got some summer programs. We do a family to family program. So instead of, like the long-term program where, it's district to district, the summer program is family to family, which means that you are then partnered with a student abroad, and then you would go live with their family for a few weeks. And then that student from that family would then come live with your family for a few weeks. So it's kind of like a direct swap. So you would be partnered directly with another exchange student from another country. You go there, they come here, and then that happens over the summer. There's also some camp or tour style programs as well. So that would be a camp or a tour in another country that you would do. And those are organized by Rotary, but instead of living like with a host family necessarily, you would do more of a summer camp type deal. So the details for the family to family, it is $500 for the program, and there are other fees that you might end up paying for. And then the students will be paired between like February and April. And then the camp and the tour fees are $250. Again, there's maybe some other fees to pay for as well. And then students for the camps are accepted on a first come, first served basis. So the priority deadline for those are December 2nd, but applications will be accepted through March 1st. So if you apply by December 2nd, interviews will be held on December 2nd. And then if you apply after December 2nd, then we'll just do interviews kind of on a rolling basis after December 2nd. So at this point, we've given you a lot of information. So some steps to take next. So we do have a lot of information on our website. You can also find our application on the website. You have a month to complete that for the long-term program. So the due date for that is November 15th. It's currently October 15th. So you got 1 month. And then if you have any questions, we'll also have time for questions at the end of this. But if anything else comes up after, we have both the Rotex email there as well as our office email. So the Rotex email, like we mentioned, is going to go to Spencer and myself. And those are questions for, students who have done the program previously. And then if you have kind of like logistic questions, then you can send those over to our office email. All right. Did anyone else from leadership have anything to add before we jump to questions? No?
I have one comment, and that is it doesn't cost anything to apply.
That's a good point.
That's true. There's no application fee.
Yes. No. I guess I just want to touch on Eric's comment about the support network as well, just because I think that's really important. North Star is made up entirely of volunteers, and we do it because we are passionate about youth exchange and making this the best possible experience for you while before you go abroad, to prepare you to go abroad, and then while you're abroad. So while you're abroad, you have um, not only a network of Rotary volunteers back home in Minnesota, but you have an entire network of Rotary individuals um, in your host country, in your host district as well. And we are very proud of that support network that we put together as well. So, um, yeah. So you're not going into this blind. You're not being sent to another country all alone by any means. So, yes.
Yeah, to add to that, there's, so many layers of support both here and in your host country. I mean, you'll have someone who will help you with your visa, and if you're doing, passport stuff, you'll have someone to help you kind of navigate, getting used to the country and what to expect as far as culture and language. You'll have someone who can really just help you kind of talk about how things are going. You have Rotex, you have other exchange students, you have Rotary Club members. So there's really a lot of people, and Rotary really is a huge web of people. So even Rotarians that are not super involved with exchange are always really willing to help exchange students and really help support in the ways that they can.
I also want to add one more thing, and that is my daughter went on both a short-term and a long-term exchange through Rotary, and I really believe in this program, and she's done well beyond that. It is I think I consider it to be the best youth exchange program in the world.
We'll open it up
So I
for
do have
questions.
one question. It was said before that you figure out what country you're going to. So how much of a choice do we have in where we go, and how much of it is assigned to us?
That's a great question. I can, Eric, you and I can both touch on this, but so at the on the interview day, after you complete your interview process, there will be a country fair. Um, and the country fair is hosted by all our inbound students, so all the students that are on exchange in Minnesota and Wisconsin right now. And they're going to essentially try to promote their country to you and basically sell it to you. So at the end of the country fair, you will have a list of all the countries that we exchange with, and you can put down your top 5 options or preferences. And we do everything in our power to make one of those preferences of your country that you're going to be attending. Um, but I would not say it's a 100% guarantee. For me, I put down Poland, and that fortunately was in my top 5, and that was where I ended up attending. Um, but I would also toss it over to Doris because I know she has a perspective on this as well.
Yes. So my situation, I'm going to preface this with, this is not the norm by any means. So I'm not trying to scare you, but so Croatia actually wasn't on my list of countries at all. So I wanted to go to South America or Spain, just because, like many students, I have a background in Spanish in grade school. But I went abroad as a junior, but I'm significantly younger than all of my other classmates. So I had just turned 15 when I went on exchange, because I was really impatient and didn't want to wait another year and knew that I had to go immediately. And so because of that, some countries have a little bit more restrictions on the age ranges that they accept. And at the time that I went in 2014, 2015, a lot of the countries in South America wanted you to be like 15 and a half or 16. And so because I had put all South American countries and they all had that requirement, I was given a number of other options that would accept me based on my age. And so I did end up going to Croatia, but I would say again, like that's definitely not the norm. And I still had an amazing experience, even though I definitely wasn't expecting to go to Croatia. I would not change it for the world. And I kind of see it as like it was meant to happen for sure. So even if things don't always work out, it can still be an amazing experience. But also we try really, really hard to get you in your top choices for sure.
One thing I'll add to that is in the last 2 years, we have been able to place students in one of their five choices. So we work really hard to try to accommodate the student selections. It's complicated because of all the different countries and the number of placements that are out there, but we certainly do try to make sure that students get one of their five choices.
We have a few questions in the comments as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll briefly speak to the first one on the summer camp and tour details. That's being updated now. I'm not exactly sure when that's going to be in place. I know we're still getting information on the camps and the tours. And then I'll also, as far as the summer exchange is typically 4 to 5 weeks in the other country, and 4 to 5 weeks the students come back to the US. So that's typically the time period for exchanges.
How do you guys choose like which grade to place us in? Because I know that different countries have different curriculums. So will we get like placed according to our school scores, or are we getting placed based on our age?
That'll vary from country to country as to where you're placed in a grade. It depends on the policies that the schools have in those countries. We don't really have any control over that as far as whether you're going to be considered a senior or a junior. I know there are rules here in the United States, and they vary from school to school. So it's going to be decided in your host country.
Yeah. In my case, because I was a gap year student, I already finished high school. I had already graduated. And so it was essentially like doing my senior year of high school over again. And so if you're a gap year student, you can kind of think about it like that. However, even still, I wasn't placed in the last year of high school in Poland. I was placed in the second to last year. So I was like with the juniors. Um, and the reason that they did that was because the final year students were all studying to take their exams to get into college. So they thought that I would have I would have more time to spend with the classmates in the junior year, which still ended up being a great experience. And I like Yvette, keep in touch with all those people, regardless of like an age difference or anything like that. So
Yeah, I was going to say that that's exactly what happened to me as well. Since I had already graduated high school, regardless of what grade level I was put in, it didn't necessarily matter since I wasn't bringing credits home anyway. And for that reason, I think a lot of people wonder too, well, why would you go back to high school? Well, why wouldn't you? You know, again, it's like if you're going to get the opportunity to live in a different country for a year and learn a language, and on top of that, develop greater or stronger interpersonal skills, as well as, you know, critical thinking skills and other things of that nature, it really outweighs you going back to high school. But also, like Spencer, that happened to me as well, where I was actually put in, I believe, their sophomore instead of their juniors, just because in junior and senior year, they are also focused on taking Suning, which is their college entrance exam. So because of that, I was not allowed, you never saw the juniors or the seniors. They would come out of their caves once in a while, but they were intense, hardcore studying to get into college. So we never saw them. And that's exactly why they put me in sophomore year, was so I can actually have classmates that I can interact with and have a normal high school experience.
Yeah, and I would agree. So I was, like I said, I was a junior in American school. I also in Croatian school was a junior as well. But there was another exchange student at my school, also through Rotary, but she was from Michigan. And she would have been a senior in the US, but she was also placed with the juniors again, because in Croatia, they have their exams senior year, and it's kind of like the SAT or the ACT on steroids. Like it's absolutely bonkers the amount of studying and preparation that they do for these. So it just made more sense to put her, even though she would have been a senior, put her in junior year. But I also transfer credits back. So it works really well for me to be a junior on both ends.
Yeah, and actually that is a good like transition into Julian's question about the credits, and we'll get back to yours, Olivia, as well. But yes, I have not heard of anyone who like hasn't been able to like graduate on time because they went on a Rotary exchange. The what ends up happening typically is that the credits or the classes that you take abroad will apply to your credits in America. So if you take a math class while you're abroad, that math credit will apply here in the US as well. And so I would not be too worried. The ones that I would be concerned about are any like obscure credits like a language, which are, that's kind of a bad example. Like
Like an American history credit, you're probably not
right.
going to take US history in Croatia.
Yes.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, but I did not have a problem transferring credits back at all. I got credit for all of the classes that I took, graduated on time, not a problem. I would say it's just so important that you reach out to your counselor at your school before you go, well before you go, and also just get everything in writing exactly of what credits you need still and kind of what your timeline is going to look like. That way, when you do go abroad, you know exactly what types of classes you need. That way, if you have some flexibility in your host country as far as what classes to take, they can kind of work with you to make sure that you're getting the credits that you need, because that's really information that you want to have beforehand. It's not something that you want to be figuring out after you finish your exchange year. So that is definitely something you want to be doing beforehand.
I'll take on the one question that Olivia had is how long are camps or tours, and that can vary. Usually, I believe they're 2 to 4 weeks in length, and it depends on the camp, depends on any other activities that are associated with the camp. So, as we get more information on the camps, you'll know what their lengths are going to be.
So if I'm taking a gap year with the Rotary program, do I get a lot of choices in what classes I'm going to take because I'll have already graduated? Do I get to take more, like elective classes, or do I have more options?
It really
Depends on the
depends.
school. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it really depends, because a lot of education systems in other countries are not like ours in the way that you can take, kind of whatever classes you want. It really depends. So in Croatia, and I know that this is kind of common for a lot of other schools as well, is you kind of stay with the same class like all day. So for example, if here we have like some schools have like homeroom. So imagine you just stay with your homeroom for every single class. You go to math together, science together, history, whatever. So a lot of times you'll have the same classes as all of your classmates and you don't have a ton of flexibility. In my case, I had some flexibility. Like there was, you could take religion, or you could take like logic, or you could take like sociology or ethics. So like there was some flexibility, but it wasn't like a create your own schedule. So it really depends on the school. It depends on the education system. There's a lot of factors there, but sometimes there's flexibility. Sometimes you're just kind of given a schedule, but it really kind of depends.
Yeah, my school was the same way. So my school was actually a very small school. My school, in fact, it was actually a private Christian school that I didn't even clock that until maybe a couple months into my exchange. But it was very nice because it was definitely optional. I wasn't in any way, shape, or form obligated to attend any of the religious classes that other students were taking. For example, like they had mass sometimes on Mondays, and if I wanted to go, I could go. If I didn't want to, I didn't have to. But I will say that although I did have a lot of flexibility in choosing a lot of my classes, for example, the art class I mentioned earlier with that photo, music and ceramics, even there was a gym class that I could take. There was sports I could join on at my school as well. I will say that although I did have the flexibility, I kind of just went with what the majority at my school would do because again, I wanted to do what I could, or I did the best that I could to be immersed fully in the classroom. So even though I did have an English class, for example, and I could choose to still follow my English speaking teacher throughout the school, I was opposed to that because again, the goal was for me to learn the language. And we do have a question here, are your classes taught in English or the host language? That also depends. My classes were all taught in the host language with the exception of English, and I think that's true with a lot of other schools in different countries that people go to. Which again, it sounds challenging and kind of scary, especially if you don't have any background in that language, but that's how immersion works, is by trying and by fully immersing yourself in that classroom, in that culture, in that experience. So to answer your question, yes and no. It depends on the school, but for the most part, a lot of schools do have flexibility, especially for students who don't necessarily need the credits, such as myself and Spencer.
Yeah. And the thing I would add here is I think we're making it sound like there's a lot of ambiguity when you go on exchange, and there is, but that's kind of part of the adventure. And like Yvette said, immersion is um being immersed in a different culture. The point of going on exchange is to confront the challenge that is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And that is one of the most important, or one is the most important, you know, takeaway that I've had from my exchange is being able to come out and say, I feel so much more prepared to face challenge and adversity in situations where I have no idea um, what may happen. And I think that the reason of that can resonate with that as well. But yes,
Yes, there is a quote that says, there is no growth in the comfort zone as there's no comfort in the growth zone. And I will say that that is 100% true on your exchange. And again, as Spencer said, we kind of make it sound like everything is in the air and you don't know until you arrive. That's completely untrue. I promise that, you know, they do have a plan in store for you as soon as you arrive. It's, again, it's, if anything, it's a part of just being flexible. It's a part of just being adaptable. And like Spencer said, you know, you really do carry, sorry, that was my cat. You really do carry with you those skills throughout life, you know, your critical thinking skills, your ability to adapt to unexpected situations. They're skills that you develop and carry with you for the rest of your life that are critical again in this world and in this day and age that's constantly advancing and always changing.
And one thing we always emphasize is this is a cultural exchange, not necessarily an educational exchange. However, the education is required as part of the program. You have to attend school, and it's part of their culture. Their educational system is part of the culture of your host country. And I'll also point out that even if the classes are in a different language than what you're used to, the the teachers will realize you're an exchange student, and if you need help or you need, they tend to give you a little bit more understanding on their part as far as their expectations from you, because you're a student who's operating in a second language that maybe you don't know that much about. So they will very likely be lenient towards you and be more willing to help you.
What factors play a part into you not getting accepted into the program?
Oh boy. Well, if you are not a good student, that wouldn't help. Um, no, I think it's very individual, and very hard to to quantify. You know, we have an interview process, and Some of it is looking at students' attitudes and students' maturity levels, because we're looking for a student who is um, the key word that we always say is resiliency. And that's hard to determine at an interview, but you can get some flavor for what a student is like at the interview. And but resiliency is all about being able to make mistakes and bounce back from those mistakes and have a successful year. So I don't know that we have any specific things that we look out for, but the interviews are to get a feel for what the student is like and what we anticipate the student would be like on exchange.
What's the definition of a good grade? Is it like excelling or passing?
Well,
We're not looking necessarily for future Harvard students, like
No.
good student, like putting in effort, I would say. But I mean, it doesn't mean you have to be like straight A's, honor roll, a million extracurriculars, just like putting in an effort, doing well in school, showing that you care about school. That's a really big thing because showing that you have like a desire to learn is a really, really important part of being an exchange student. So that's kind of what we're looking for, a willingness to learn a new language, a willingness to kind of adapt, to be in a host family. Because that's the other thing is being in a host family is definitely an adjustment for sure. You know, you're moving in with a family that you don't know. And so that is definitely an adjustment. So just kind of looking at students like adaptability, willingness to, you know, kind of get out of their comfort zone a little bit, desire to learn, you know, doing well in school, things like that.
good questions. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go
Uh,
ahead.
I guess I was just wondering, so when you list your 5 countries, is it usually just one of those 5 at random, or do you like put them like in order, or yeah?
We don't have you rank your 5 countries. It's just 5 countries that you want to go to. There is there's no ranking order in them.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Any other questions or comments from anybody?
Um, my name's Jean. I'm the mom of Jacob Weniger, who is also online. And at the risk of embarrassing my son, I just want that I was an exchange student in Chile in 1984 to 85 through the Rotary Exchange program.
Lovely.
Yes, and I had not plugged in all the years since. And now, with my son's interested, I have a reason to. And for everyone else online, I guess I'd put a pitch in also that it was probably a defining moment of my of several defining moments in my life. So well worth the year.
Thank you very much. And yes, it's a transformational year for a lot of students. And you know, I keep harking back to Dennis White, who's a psychologist out of Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, who has done a study on Rotary Youth Exchange students and determined that during the year of exchange, Rotary Exchange students can mature up to 5 years. So there are a lot of changes that go on within that 1 year period.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Jean, as well. I just wanted to say that. If that's all, you have our emails and I believe all the students should have my personal email because you received information about this Zoom and everything from me. Um, so feel free to contact us and we will get back to you as soon as possible. And you're welcome to ask us any questions that you have about the program or our experience, or it doesn't matter. We will